Hey kids, Zion kids, it is Pastor Eric here at my favorite place in church. That's up at the front of the church where, well, a little while ago you guys used to sit up here and we'd talk about things and I'd tell you about things about God and how much God loves you and everything. This is my favorite place in church because I like the adults. I kind of like the adults, but I really like the kids. I really miss you kids, and hopefully in the next probably month or two, we'll start getting more kids back in church, and that will be really, really fun. I'm looking forward to seeing you. But right now we're doing Sunday school kind of this way, and we're talking about God's love in February. So our lesson today is about God's love for you that's one of a kind. One of a kind. There's material that you and your mom or dad can work through and look through, but I'm going to read you from Sparks Story Bible. If you have that out, it's on page 374. I'm sure your mom or dad already has that ready for you. So we're going to read a story, two stories, actually 3 stories. So about how God loves each one of us, how God loves you, kind of like you are the only person in the whole world. God loves you that much, as if you're the only person in the whole world. God loves you so much. So we're going to talk about the lost sheep and the lost coin. If you have your books open, you can kind of follow along. Telling stories was Jesus' favorite way to teach people about God. In fact, many times they'd ask him a hard question because they were always out to try to trap Jesus. And so Jesus said, okay, let me tell you a story. So once there was a shepherd who had 100 sheep, Jesus said. He loved them all, the big ones and the little ones, the good ones and the naughty ones. They were all his sheep, and he loved them. Every day, this shepherd counted his sheep to make sure that they were all safe. One day, he counted only 99. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 99. He only counted 99, and he had 100 of them. Oh no, one was missing right away. The shepherd left the 99 and went to look for the one that was lost. The shepherd listened for the lost sheep. Ah! He looked in all the places that sheep might hide or get stuck or in trouble. It took a while, but the shepherd kept looking until he found the missing one. Then he called together all of his friends and neighbors, and he said, come over, I found my sheep, let's have a party. Jesus loved telling stories like this one about something being lost and then found. Jesus says, I have another story, Jesus said. Once there was a woman who had saved up 10 little silver coins. One day she was counting them, and she discovered she lost one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but she had 10. What do you think she did? Did she think to herself, oh, well, I still have 9, so I don't care if one is lost? No, she did not. She lit her lamp and swept the house from top to bottom. She looked under and over everything in her house until she found the lost coin. She was so happy she had a party to celebrate. God is like the shepherd and a woman that, you know, Jesus said, God would never stop looking for someone who was lost. Have you ever been lost? Have you ever kind of gotten away, your mom or dad, and you kind of got lost at the park or at Fred Meyer, or kind of you were looking at something and all of a sudden you didn't know where your mom or dad was? Remember that feeling? And then remember the feeling when all of a sudden you found out where they were and they gave you a great big hug and they said they missed you and that they were so glad that they found you. That's how God feels about us. When we kind of forget about God, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, God loves me just like I'm the only one to love. And God is so happy about that. So here's another story, the prodigal or the runaway son. Jesus spent time with all sorts of people, even people who had done bad things. That made some people mad. Why is Jesus always hanging around people who did bad things? They grumbled. Jesus heard them, and so he told them a story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son, who was he was a bit wild and crazy, came to his father and said, "Dad, I want you to give me everything. I want my money." That made the father really sad, but he split his money and gave his son the part that was his. The younger son packed up his bag and headed away from home. The son traveled to a faraway country and spent all of his money on fancy parties and food. Soon he had no money and he had no place to stay. Lucky for him, he found a man who would let him sleep in the barn if the son would feed the pigs. Then the son said to himself, "What am I thinking?" as he fed the pigs. "The men who work for my father have more than enough to eat, and I have to starving to death. I'll go home and say to my father, 'Dad, I made a big mistake. I'm not good enough to be your son, but would you let me work for you?' So he went home. While he was still far away from home, his father saw him. His father ran and threw his arms around the son. The father put a ring on his son's finger and shoes on his feet and ordered a party to be thrown for him. The older son saw the father's servants preparing for the party, and he put his hand on his hip and he said, "What's going on here?" "Your father is home. Your brother is home," said the servant, "and your father is throwing a party." That made the older brother angry at his father. He said, "I've always done what is right," he said to his father. "I've worked hard for you, but you never gave me a party. Now my brother came home after he wasted your money. Why are you throwing him a party?" "My son," said the father, "you have always been with me, but your brother left and now has come back." Then the people understood. Jesus spent time with those people because even though they had done bad things, they decided to change their lives and live like God wanted. And that made Jesus so happy. So think about how much your parents love you and care for you. Think about sometimes when you didn't clean your room or maybe messed up somehow and your mom or dad just got mad at you and scolded you for just a little bit. But I'll bet within probably 10 minutes, they gave you a great big hug and said, "You know what? We love you. We love you and care for you because there's nothing you can ever do that will make us so mad that we won't love you and hug you." That's a wonderful thing about moms and dads, that they love you no matter what. So think about that and give your mom or dad a great big hug today and tell them how much you love them and you really love it that they love you. Just give your mom or dad a great big hug. So have fun doing the lesson for this week. God's love, is one of a kind. God loves you so much, like you were the only one in the whole world to love. Hey, I will be with you again next week, and we'll talk about the next part, L-O-V. We'll talk about V next week. So I missed you kids. Hope to see you again sometime soon. And you take care. Bye-bye.